this week's episode of Hotter Than Health. My name is Eliza Gelman. Welcome. I am happy that you are here today. If you saw this title and you thought, oh, this is me, this is something I think about all the time, or maybe you have just begun thinking about either reducing your caffeine, switching it up, or you maybe just wanted to learn a little bit more, you've come to the right place. Today we have a solo episode talking about the differences between matcha versus coffee, and we're going to go through the goods, the bads, the details. We're going to be objective, looking at some research, looking at a little bit of numbers, and then I want to get into more of the slightly more subjective and opinion-based feedback and things that I would find myself talking about in day-to-day conversation. I'm not the kind of person who just in everyday conversation is going to cite resources and research, different things like that. I would more so have testimonial or opinion-based, or essentially having a realistic conversation like I would have with girlfriends or any friends about the differences. Like, how do we actually feel when we consume matcha versus when we consume coffee? And we'll be real about it. And also, it's matcha versus coffee. It is not, this is not life or death. I just find it so interesting because genuinely the difference is in mostly anxiousness and honestly nausea if I have too much caffeine or appetite suppressant. We'll get into all of that. But this episode was really like on my mind a lot, and I had a couple of other options in mind, but this one really kept sticking out to me to speak about. Before we get into matcha versus coffee, I wanted to say, first of all, thank you for being here. If you have not already subscribed to the podcast, head over to Apple Podcast, click follow or subscribe. Leave us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. That's genuinely the greatest, most natural way to organically grow the podcast. And once we do that, have more of those reviews, it pushes the podcast out to others who are searching for health or stumbling across these types of podcasts. And it really does mean the world. I read every single review, and it counts for a lot. And I appreciate it in advance. Or if you're listening on Spotify, just click follow and you'll never miss an episode. It's fabulous. And it's great for my numbers, not going to lie. Okay. I wanted to give a quick update because I did an episode a couple weeks ago on 75-day hard. I'm doing the 75-day hard challenge, which essentially, if you're not super familiar with it, high level, it's 2 workouts a day. One of them has to be outside, 10 pages of reading a nonfiction book, drink a gallon of water, follow a specific diet, which for me is really just not leaning into a ton of sugar or processed food. It's essentially the exact same as I had been doing, but instead of having, more flexibility on like desserts and stuff, I'm just doing dark chocolate. I mean, it's nothing wild, but it's also like no cheat meals or no alcohol. I wanted to give a quick update on that. It's day 14, and so far, so good, feeling great. I did a whole episode on how I'm taking it a little easier this time. I'm still doing all the things that it requires, but doing it in a way that I am going to be able to sustain it, hopefully. And who knows, life happens. I have my first work trip coming up out of town. We'll be in Nashville this coming week, so I'm interested to see how I'm going to be able to knock out 2 45-minute workouts, one of them being outside. I may have to adjust it, and if people are like, well, then you got to start over. Okay, it's not that serious, guys. I think I'm going to wake up extra early and just do 90 minutes, which is like 45 minutes of weights, and then maybe a 45-minute walk or a 30-minute walk and a stretch. So it really will just require me to wake up a little bit earlier, which I'm fine doing. So I'm excited to see how that goes, and really, really excited to report back. So far, I'm feeling great. I don't feel burnt out. I feel like I have plenty of energy, sleeping really well. Some of the workouts are really just going into the gym and getting a resistance band and doing abs, mobility work, stretching. And sometimes, if when you get into a deep stretch, sometimes you start to sweat. It's like when you're laying down and you're at a doctor's office or you're getting a wax. Anytime there's tension on the muscles, whether it's stretching or a workout, I sweat. I sweat and it feels great. I love it. And that's one way that I'm staying extra sustainable. So it might be a 45-minute outside walk at a good at a good pace, or it will, and then the next 45-minute will be stretching. And then the next day we'll do weights and I'll do a Pilates and then I'll do a HIIT workout or whatever it is, like how I'm feeling during that day. Also going based on my cycle. I'm not going absolutely wild when I'm on my period or the week before. It's been cool. And I think that it's the smartest way that I can really do it. And it's also helping me to get mentally ready and physically prepared for Kilimanjaro, which we have coming up at the end of August. Okay, that's all I wanted to do as far as updates go. Oh, and we're doing the challenge. So as we said on Mastery Monday, if you're not on the Strava app, make sure you request to follow me. I don't really even know how to do all these things, but go on, follow me on Strava, and we can track all of our workouts and make sure you're also making sure you're not posting your location on this. You can keep it private only for your friends that you accept to follow you. Okay, cool. I'm not going to repeat myself on all the episodes that I've already recorded because I do want to get into matcha. Matcha versus coffee. Let me say this straight off the bat. If you are someone who's like, look, I drink coffee, I love coffee, I feel fine with it, I have no problems, great. You can just listen to this informationally. You'll likely learn something you didn't know before, or 9 times out of 10, we all have that one friend who maybe you notice is jittery, drinks caffeine all the time, hasn't had a sip of water since 2008, needs to have some greens juice, needs to do something to lower their cortisol levels. Maybe they don't sleep. Maybe they're just a ball of anxiety, but you see them drinking coffee all the time. This is going to give you a little bit more armor, because if you're someone who's like, oh, you got to stop drinking coffee, it's probably because you're drinking all that coffee. Oh, why don't you stop drinking all that coffee? Instead of speaking at this person so much, if you can arm yourself with a few of the benefits of switching to matcha, it will likely come off as a better conversation. You won't seem like a nag, and you're teaching them something. You're giving them something of value to marinate on. And I know that I've been in both of those seats. Trust. When it comes to some of the facts and details, I'll post the resource that I base this info off of. I'll post it in the show notes. When it comes to matcha versus coffee, one of the first things to consider objectively, just looking at the facts, there is approximately 96 grams, closer to 100 milligrams, of caffeine in a cup of coffee versus the 70 milligrams versus in matcha. We're looking at 96 milligrams to 100 milligrams versus 70 milligrams. Although it's only 26 milligrams of difference, that adds up. Here's what we're looking at when it comes to some of the things that people may gravitate towards when it comes to drinking coffee. Coffee can have several different benefits. One that has been more and more researched lately has been some of the coffee benefits on your cognitive health. Coffee is high in something called polyphenols, antioxidants, and obviously caffeine. This can potentially be a good thing. The European Journal of Clinical Nutrition observed 676 healthy elderly men in Europe over the course of 10 years. The results revealed that participants who drank coffee struggled less with a cognitive decline than those who did not drink it. Again, those who drank coffee struggled less with a cognitive decline than those who did not drink coffee. There wasn't a controlled intake of coffee, meaning they weren't telling people exactly how much coffee to drink. Researchers found that the least cognitive decline for men who consumed 3 cups per day. I would also, look, I clearly am not the one conducting all of this research in these studies, and this is high-level glance at these studies, but the European Journal of Medicine, or of clinical nutrition. This is also in Europe. This is over 10 years or elderly men drinking 3 cups of coffee. I would like to note that we are not talking about men who are likely drinking 3 frappuccinos or lattes every single day. 3 cups of coffee, and typically when you are in Europe and you are served a cup of coffee, it's either a coffee with a little bit of milk or simply an espresso, some sort of more simplistic coffee. And again, I'm not guaranteeing that that's what they did. However, I do know that this is not an American-based study. This is people who already potentially have better ingredients in their food. This is better ingredients in their coffee, less chemicals, less preservatives. I think that that is also a huge, huge consideration factor. That is one thing to consider. However, coffee is coffee, and over a span of 10 years, 676 healthy elderly men, that's not a tiny sample size. All right. This is also cool to see, as I've had 2 cups of coffee today already, but coffee may support longevity. One large study explains that higher consumption of coffee was associated with lower risk of death and in particular mortality rate due to digestive and circulatory diseases, as reported by the Annals of Internal Medicine. This is interesting. We all know that when we all know. You're like, oh, I really got to go to the bathroom, or, oh, I haven't gone to the bathroom in a while. Why don't you have a cup of coffee, George? See how that goes. And then all of a sudden you have that first sip of coffee. I used to have a roommate. Oh my God, she would kill me. But I used to have a roommate. And if I were ever up before her, I would be making a French press, or I would be making a cup of coffee, whatever I was doing to create that cup in the morning. I'd be making the coffee. And she would come out and without saying a word, she's like, let me get a sniff. And she would just gesture over to the little espresso or the coffee that I had. She would take a sniff and say, thank you, and go straight into the bathroom and have her morning conference call and feel great. And sometimes it's that knowingness. Your body's like, oop, I know what coffee does to my bowels. And it immediately, it definitely helps with some of that release. And we know that so much buildup in our colon, in the lower intestine, is really, really terrible for our gastric health. Digestion slows down metabolism, creates inflammation, and indigestion, a lot of different problems. So if we are seeing mortality from different types of colon issues, gut issues, then if there's a way to clear things out, why wouldn't that be a good thing? And with that comes along with another point of research saying coffee may help with to get digestion moving. Well, yeah. Functional medicine doctor Wendy Trubo, who we have actually had on the podcast, and if you want to listen to that, we talk about mold and toxicity. So feel free to go back and listen to the episode that we did with Dr. Wendy Trubo. She's a MD, MBA, previously told this medicine journal that it is clear that coffee increases the activity in our gut called peristalsis. That said, it's still unclear to experts why this occurs. The warm temperature of the liquid may stimulate motility. Integrative gastroenterologist Marvin Singh, MD, adds, which means this benefit may not be exclusive to coffee. I'll tell you one thing. This is personal, but I've had hot lemon water. I've had hot tea. I've had other hot liquids. They don't do it quite like coffee does it. I think we can all agree on this. I believe that it's a combination of caffeine, perking up our system, and the warmth, which I think aids in the relaxation of the muscles. Catch my drift? Either way, all those things, coffee has cognitive benefits. It may support longevity, and coffee may help to get digestion moving. It also, of course, has almost 96 to 100 milligrams of caffeine per 8 fluid ounces, and that's a lot of caffeine. So if it is more efficient. It's more efficient. And then let's let's build a case around matcha. I think that so many times we think of matcha and we think, oh, it's not going to be as, for some reason, we just don't feel as personally connected with matcha. Or the vast majority of people veer towards coffee simply because it's easier than matcha. Matcha has, you got to grow to love the flavor. You have to grow to love the process. You have to understand a little bit more about it. You can't think that it's just like coffee or it's just like a green juice. It is different. However, more and more people are finding themselves gravitating towards matcha because of these amazing benefits. Like we mentioned in the beginning of this, right at the top of this episode, if you have that friend who you know needs to cool it on the caffeine, or you know someone who is struggling, or we're gonna get to this other note in a second. I won't get there quite yet. There are different reasons why mentally and physiologically it might be more beneficial to consume matcha than it is to consume coffee. And a lot of that has to do with hormones. And as you've heard us talk about on the podcast, and you've likely heard this around town and in the podcast world or just in the world in general of health and wellness, that the fight or flight hormone, which is cortisol, it's that hormone that is super high in the morning. It keeps us safe. It's important. We must have it, but it can get out of balance. And if you are filling up your cup of cortisol in the morning, then all it's going to do is come down all day long. And then you're going to continue to try and fill it back up, but it won't hit it naturally. And you'll start to feel those slumps and crashes throughout the day. But let's get into some of the benefits of matcha and why it may be a great option for you. What is matcha? It's basically a green tea powder. And they take the leaves, they grind them up into that really, really bright green. And then those green tea powders have a ton of health benefits. There's obviously nuances and different stages to this process. You don't just get a green tea leaf and grind it up. There's different temperatures. There's the different shades of trees that they put these plants under to make sure that they have optimal nutrition at the peak of their picking. But one of the benefits is that matcha has lower acidity. When we talked about the immediacy of running to the bathroom once you've had that cup of coffee, a lot of the time it's because your body is like, whoa, what is this? Maybe it's toxic. Maybe it's too much of a stimulate. It's something, it's like, oh, eject immediately. And a lot of it has to do with that acidity. Matcha has a lower acidity and is more alkaline than coffee with almost the same amount of caffeine content. And that was from Dr. Ella Devar. She's an RD, a CDN. The lower acidity means matcha may also be a better choice for anyone with a sensitive stomach. A lot of people who they think, oh, I immediately have to get rid of caffeine. I immediately have to get rid of coffee. That typically means you have to get rid of like to fix any gut issues, but you have to get rid of high acidity situations and high acidity, sugary, caffeinated elements. Yeah, maybe you don't need a Coca-Cola every day or a Diet Coke. Maybe you don't need a cup of coffee. But if you also don't want to have extreme caffeine withdrawals and caffeine headaches, which if I don't have caffeine for a day, at the end of the day, I do get a little bit of a headache. So I know, like, I'm a full addict. I get it. The lower acidity, again, might be a better choice if you do find yourself with a sensitive stomach. The next benefit is that matcha may ease stress. We see this all the time. You know, that first cup of coffee feels really good. Second cup of coffee, you're like, okay, I'm definitely feeling good, and please don't talk to me. I'm super focused. Third cup of coffee, unless you're completely immune to it, and then that's a whole other issue. We will talk. But you're on that you're at that point when you're consuming coffee that you are jittery. And some of the reasons why people gravitate more towards matcha is because you are getting caffeine. However, the green tea is also rich in l-theanine, which people supplement with all the time, but l-theanine provides a number of overarching benefits to your health. Research suggests that this amino acid can have an anti-stress effect on the body. And combined with the caffeine, you may experience a natural boost of energy and alertness. As we mentioned before, caffeine does a really great job of stimulating and simulating cortisol, which is that fight or flight stress hormone, which again, we need, but in balance. Matcha can have the anti-stress effect on the body. When you couple anti-stress from the l-theanine, along with natural caffeine, you get this really great combination of being alert and awake, but without feeling like you could run through a wall, or without the jitteriness. Maybe your pupils don't dilate so much, and you simply feel an elevated amount of energy without the jitterness or the jittery effect. One of the other reasons, and I want to make sure that I preface this by saying coffee also has antioxidants, but matcha is also loaded with antioxidants. It actually has about 3 times as much of the antioxidant, oh my God, I am absolutely going to butcher this word, epigallocatechin gallate. Epicatechin gallate. Oh my gosh. Matcha has about 3 times as much of this than other green teas. So you're getting these antioxidants, which can help to fight free radicals. It can help clear out unhealthy cells in your body. And one review analyzing the benefits and the chemical makeup of matcha found that its antioxidant content can help neutralize free radical damage and even aid in the body's natural detoxification process, meaning it's going to help support getting rid of the bad stuff in your body. That's all that's saying. So it's loaded in antioxidants, and you've probably heard there's a ton of benefits to green tea. This is basically just packed into a more condensed version. And then again, it has about 70 milligrams per 8-ounce cup of coffee, cup of matcha. I feel like so many people discount the amount of caffeine in matcha. I personally would not have matcha after noon, after maybe 1 p.m., meaning it does have enough caffeine content in it that it would keep you awake if you had it later on in the day. Don't discount matcha just because it doesn't give you, I think we have gotten so comfortable and used to the way that caffeine from coffee makes us physically feel that we don't realize that the jitteriness is not always normal. That is not necessarily what I would call a positive effect. It's almost like we always go back to what's familiar. And if you grew up drinking coffee or you started drinking coffee a long time ago, that is now your new familiar. So we may think that getting caffeine and not feeling that way, it's not working. I find it similar to when, and I used to feel this way all the time, when I first started really getting into weight training and into my workouts even more. I was in this headspace where if I'm not sweating and breathing hard and feeling like pain, then I'm not getting a good workout. And it took me a long time to realize that doing steady state cardio and not getting my heart rate up super high is still a workout. Pilates is still a workout. Heart rate moves, but it's not as crazy. You're not, in super pain the whole time. It burns, but it's not super pain. It's more sustainable. I feel like if we can challenge our way of thinking that we must feel jittery or we must race to the bathroom to have a conference call after a cup of caffeine for it to feel like it's working, then it's going to be a much easier transition to matcha if you feel like that's something that you need to do. Now that we have talked a little about some of the more researched benefits of matcha, I do want to get into some of the more subjective. That was all objective. There's research with it. It's more factual. However, I think that it's important to talk the way that we would in a real day-to-day conversation when you're having that conversation with a friend and they're saying, yeah, I'm stressed or I'm anxious, and they're chugging a ton of coffee. Or maybe this is you. It's definitely been me not even that long ago. And some days I'm like, look, I want the coffee, but I got to do a decaf or I got to do a matcha, something lighter. And in real life, we would have conversations and understand that, yes, coffee may have benefits, but the way I see it, coffee is simply so accessible. And this is a good thing and probably a problem. Coffee within itself is so incredibly accessible. There are coffee bars at work. You may live in an apartment complex and they have, coffee in the front office for free every single morning. Maybe they have it at your gym. Maybe you have it likely at every single grocery store you go to in cans. They make it super convenient to have iced, cold, different flavors. It's no longer about the coffee. It's more now about the caffeine buzz mixed with a delicious flavor, which I totally get. Do not get me wrong. I love a flavor. But it has gotten to the point where we no longer think of this. The benefits of coffee are so mind-blowingly outweighed by the negative crap that we are loading into the coffee. Yes, it has antioxidants and polyphenols. Yes, it's been associated with longevity in these studies. Yes, it's been all these things. Not if you are loading it with 16 grams of added sugar per cup, or if you are pumping it with so much preservative and flavor and artificial fillers and added calories and sugar and fat. It's going to spike your blood sugar so much that your body will naturally go into fight or flight, not even based on the caffeine, but based on the sugar. So yes, there are benefits to coffee, but the way that America has revamped the experience of drinking coffee with Starbucks, with oat milk, with sugar, with all these different flavors and additives and branding and marketing, we have completely gotten away from any type of reaping any of the benefits of coffee. Let's be honest. Long gone are the days, and or at least it's so rare. I know maybe 3 people who do this on a regular basis. Long gone are the days when people would just order a cup of black coffee and that's it. I'll take a small coffee. And now it is, okay, I will do a oat milk latte, 1/2 pump of vanilla, add cinnamon with cold foam on top. Thank you. Which, okay, hello. These are delicious. Trust me, I am not trying to act like I've not done this. This morning, actually, when we were home, I just did 1 drop of stevia, a little bit of whole organic milk, and cinnamon on top. So I consider that's like pretty tame in the grand scheme of things. But trust me, it was a big one. It had a ton of caffeine, and I definitely had some protein before it, and I put creatine in it. But later on, when I yesterday went on a walk, and I went to this place called Milk Bread down the street. It's so great. And it was such a hot day. I was like, God, the iced coffee just sounds so good. I'm an addict. I was like itching for it. I needed it. And I was like, I think they have the tiny ice. You know, the little ice chips? I said, I'll take a iced latte. And I just got regular milk because the other ones I looked and they had just tons of processed. I was like, I just want less ingredients. But then I said, can I have 1/2 pump of vanilla? Because I was like, your girl is feeling crazy. And I watched them pump it in, and they did this big, fat, full pump of vanilla. And I thought, oh, God, it's going to be so sweet. And it was. It was. All I'm saying is that I get it. I get it. It's good. But if you can slowly wean yourself away from some of the ingredients that are being added to the coffee that you're ordering, or if you can slowly, like the next time you go and get your regular order from Starbucks, can you just get 1 less pump of one of the flavors? Or can you add a little bit of ghee to slow down the absorption of the caffeine? how can you get slightly farther away from that original super, super, super sweet or artificial flavor so that your body doesn't become so used to that artificial flavor that anything with even slight sweetness feels like it's nothing? Anyways, another thing that I believe is something that should be talked about a lot, and I say this, and I know that a lot of women will be able to resonate with this. There have been times in my life where I was so hell-bent on body image and making sure I was super tiny, not wanting to feel bloated. If I felt any bloated at all, I felt just body image was just at a low. And a lot of this had to do with, what I was eating, how I was feeling, and body image, and feeling like if I was hungry and I had eaten earlier that day, like I was fat, or I was eating too much, or, oh, what are they going to think about me if I already want to eat again? Like all of these unhealthy thoughts that went through my mind. And I understand that this is something that a lot of people, a lot of women and men, but we hear it more from women, they go through. Body image is a real issue. And I promise you, where I come from is from such a place of me just wanting everyone to feel so good, but also feel seen and heard, knowing that feeling good doesn't always feel easy to do. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So when I feel like I can definitely speak to both sides when I know how it feels to have these body image issues and get super in your head about ingredients and food and processed. Like, I get it. There was definitely a time when I was abusing caffeine and abusing coffee because I knew that it suppressed my appetite. And I thought, okay, well, I'll go get a coffee because I know it will help me fast longer. And I would sometimes use fasting as an excuse to just feel skinny that day or feel accomplished in some sense, or like I had some control. It wasn't a great feeling. It was horrible for my hormones. That's when I was having all of these, chronic UTIs, cystic acne out the wazoo. Just I got strep throat so many different times alongside with the UTIs, and I know they're correlated. Like there were so many things going on, but caffeine kept me in that high cortisol fight or flight mode where my body just was not healing. But it felt good to not feel hungry. I was like, oh, progress. But then I realized feeling really hungry is it's a good sign of your strong metabolism. My body wanted more. And this was years and years ago, but it was tough to go through. So I think that being real with yourself and thinking, hey, is this something that I do just to suppress my appetite? It is a conversation to have. We're either flooding our drinks with sugar and processed ingredients, or we're using it to feel like we don't need to eat much. And again, I think coffee is just such an easy one to focus on because it's all over the place. And I'm not saying it's a villain. I had 2 cups today. Like, trust me, this is just the world we live in, and it's delicious, and I get it. But are we able to modify in a way that makes the thing that we're doing every single day a little bit more sustainable and a little bit more based on longevity? It's something to consider. One thing I do want to make sure we touch on, as we talked a little bit about the matcha and the l-theanine and some of the benefits and effects of it, I had to make sure we talked about the Organifi greens powder. The greens powder is something that I take every single morning. If I wake up early, I pour my boyfriend and I a glass, and if I wake up after him, he's like, hey, have you had your greens yet? And we don't do coffee. We don't do anything until we've had our greens. Not only does it have things like the amazing greens benefits, but it also has, it gets you to drink more water. It fills in a ton of nutritional gaps right in the beginning of your day. And I really think that it helps get things going in the bathroom. I love it. It's amazing. It also, like matcha, has some of those stress fighting components. It has adaptogens, which helps to regulate your nervous system. So if you are someone who's going to have that cup of coffee or even a little bit more caffeine in some other way, why not have some adaptogens that will help to stabilize whatever type of spikes or moments of over-caffeinated feelings that you're going to have. The green juice, I really love the green apple flavor. We're going back to the original just for some of the travel packets for the trips that we have coming up. But I have a work trip coming up this week. I am bringing 2 packets. I use half a packet each morning, and then the third morning before I leave, I just chug a big one. I'm obsessed with it. They last me forever, and I truly don't like starting the day without it. I can tell when I do not have the Organifi greens powder. You can check it out too by using the code HTH. Again, that is Organifi.com/HTH. And you can get 20% off of any of their products. You can't go wrong. Trust me on this. Everyone that I have turned on to Organifi has absolutely become the healthiest version of an addict for this product. Again, it's Organifi.com/HTH for 20% off. Enjoy. As we look at the differences between matcha versus coffee, all I want to leave you with is ask yourself this. Do I consume coffee in a way that you can actually reap some of the benefits of longevity, of the antioxidants, of those polyphenols? Or am I in a space where you want to focus on lowering your stress levels, getting better sleep at night, and maybe calming down your gut a little bit? This might be a good time to look at some of your options for ceremonial or organic matcha. You will pay just the same amount, probably save some money, and you might even lower some of your stress levels. So if this is a conversation you want to have, please reach out to me. I think it is so fascinating and such a benefit to our life to understand a little more about the things that we're consuming on a day-to-day basis. And if you are in any of the headspaces that I mentioned, thinking about body image and thinking about our overall health and getting overwhelmed, you can reach out to me as well for those. You can follow us on Instagram at ElizaG_wellness or Hotter Than Health Podcast. Make sure you subscribe, like, and follow, and we'll talk to you on Mastery Monday.